Hello and welcome to a special Crypto Insider interview. And today we are going to speak about the situation that we have with ETCDEV, which is one of the four major development companies which support the Ethereum Classic project. And if you've watched the news, then you realize that it announced on Twitter that it would shut down operations. And that's why we have Donald McIntyre, who used to be the marketing specialist of ETCDEV, but it turns out that right now he's out of job. So hello, Mr. McIntyre.
Hi, Vlad. How are you?
Well, pretty much the same as the last time we spoke.
Bueno, I am not the same as the last time we spoke.
Yeah,
A lot of
unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I see you're wearing that ETCDEV hoodie, and I know that you're supposed to have a meeting in Vancouver later this week. Yeah.
Yes. It was tomorrow, a meetup.
Oh, I guess that's a bummer. It no
Yes,
longer takes place.
I have the hoodie and the T-shirt because I still support ETCDEV and Igor Artamanov, the founder and CTO of ETCDEV. And I really wish for the company to be reinstated and for Igor to come back to work for ETC. I would if he decides to rehire me again also, but that's not the reason.
Let's say that tomorrow ETCDEV gets reinstated and it secures funding. Would you get back to your old job?
Yes, if he calls me to go back, yes, absolutely.
But what about the situation in which you get an offer from ETC Labs or ETC Cooperative or IOHK?
No, I personally didn't get any offers from any other companies in the in the ETC space nor anywhere else. I prefer to work for ETCDEV. I think that both Igor personally and ETCDEV as a company are very important for them to come back to ETC because they were in a way the most conservative group within the ecosystem, always serving as a counterforce to other groups who believed in immutability also, but in some actions that maybe Igor and ETCDEV didn't agree with. So I think that counterbalance is important. And what's happening now, which is a social attack on the network, and the attack successfully made Igor to go away because he's very annoyed and he doesn't want to work on ETC anymore, and he shut down the company also because of the cash crunch. So that attack is being successful. So I think that it may be centralizing at the social layer, ETC. So that's why I think that ETCDEV and Igor should come back.
But you still have ETC Cooperative and ETC Labs and IOHK, which work on the project. And as far as I know, there are some engineers which were hired by ETC Labs in the last week.
Yes, that's true. As far as I know, they hired of the 8 persons in the technical team, they hired concretely 2, but they made offers to all of them. But in terms of centralization, that is not the part that concerns me. The part that concerns me is that of all the entities that you described, you have several clusters. You have, for example, DCG, which is based in New York, and Grayscale. They made the ETC ETF and other ETFs.
And that's the company of Barry Silbert, right?
Yes, that company is a group, and that company started ETC Cooperative. So you could say that they are related with ETC Cooperative. Then separately, you have another, what I call cluster, which is a Chinese group called DFG, Digital Finance Group, who are the ones that are performing this, what I call social attack. And they are like a VC firm or an investment firm, and they have a subsidiary which is ETC Labs, which is based in San Francisco, and it's an incubator for ETC. But they also contributed to ETC Co-op, and they are in the board of ETC Co-op. So even though there are two groups, from a security perspective, from the blockchain perspective, I think they can be considered as a quasi cluster, or at least two clusters that are friendly. Then you have IOHK, which is very independent, but we don't necessarily have the same ideas. And then you had ETCDEV, which is another cluster. So, and that we were the conservative cluster, meaning that we were for maximum security at the base layer and to build stuff on top, and to not innovate so much with new things necessarily at the base layer, just to protect its security, and do everything on top, like a treasury, for example. But because, and that the leader of that cluster or that company was Igor Artamanov. So because he left and the company shut down, now that balancing force in the blockchain is lost. So that's why I think it creates, at least, personally, I think it creates centralization at the social layer, but at least some centralization.
But as far as I read rumors about the situation, some people used to say that Igor Artamanov, who is in charge of the team, managed the funds poorly and had ETC and BTC, which he was storing as a way of maintaining the wealth of the entire department. And during this bear market, he got to the point where he could no longer pay salaries, he could no longer pay the developers. And that may be one of the reasons why he requested more funding, which he was about to receive on condition that he would make some changes to the protocol. And he disagreed, and that's why he decided to shut down instead. So how much of that story is actually true?
It is true that the company had a cash crunch, and Igor realized that, or started effectively to do something about that in the first half of October. And that started everything, arguably. So it is true in that sense. It is not a mismanagement or anything like that. It's just a startup like any other startup that doesn't have revenues and reaches a point where they need money again. In earlier October, he had money, but when he realized that he needed to get more money in the form of a grant, for example, he went immediately. In the second or third week of October, we all went to San Francisco to the ETC Labs launch, which is, again, a subsidiary of DFG. And before even going to San Francisco, he had already spoken to DFG, I think James Waugh, and the founder, and Terry Culver, who's an executive at DFG and the CEO of ETC Labs. And he already manifested that he needed funds. And they said that they told him not to worry, that they would provide a grant. And they even negotiated a contract. I saw the contract. I revised it to see the milestones, amounts, etc., to just cross-check it with. He wanted to cross-check it with me. It was for $300,000, and then a little bit more later. They were speaking, but they only sent $40,000. So in that sense, there was a cash crunch, which was the origin of the situation. Then he went to people with money, which is who are DFG, and they promised the money, and they told him not to look for money anywhere else because they would take care of it. So they just spent many weeks negotiating, and because they only sent 40, by the end of November, he had to stop. Not only that, but they were talking all this time since the first half of October, very frequently. But in mid-November, Darcy Reno went to Hong Kong for something personal. And he told us that he was going to have a meeting, that Terry Culver of DFG and ETC Labs called him to have a meeting. So they met in Hong Kong. I think he met with others also at DFG. And then he came back by the, I think, like the third week of November. And in our first meeting, this is from my perspective, this was in November 19th. We spoke about regular stuff, how everything went, normal day-to-day things. And then Igor told me that he had a cash crunch and that he had reached the end of his funding, and that DFG didn't send the rest of the funds. So now he is at the end of the funding, and only one more week he could finance. Okay, so like a normal startup, we went on a normal mode to get funds. So we started to call people and to check also with DFG, but nothing was happening. And then that was a Monday, November 19th, and then that Friday, which was Black Friday, we have the daily call between the company, and we talk about everything like as usual, the normal daily stuff. And at the end of the meeting, Darcy announced to the team that he was leaving and that he was going to ETC Labs. And that's when I realized that this was a coordinated, at the time, only just a coordinated effort to disintermediate ETCDEV and poach the employees. By next Monday, we had the morning call, and Igor, instead of talking about the daily stuff, he directly asked all the developers, okay, who's being hired or who's going away or who's being offered jobs by ETC Labs? And 100% said that they were all approached. So it was declared, not only did we have a cash crunch, but the entity that was promising to give us the grant is the same entity who started poaching the employees. So it was clear for us that was the plan.
So just to clear up, because if you type into Google right now Ethereum Classic, which I did a few hours ago, you get a lot of news like crypto bear market strikes Ethereum Classic development group. No, this is actually good. There was one which announced the death of the coin. Oh yeah, this one from the Modern Investor. Ethereum Classic shut down, Ethereum to $1. And will Ethereum Classic survive today's news and stuff like this? So just to clear up all these rumors, this is not the end of ETC. So the coin doesn't have anything to suffer from this process. It's just that some developers, which maybe had a vision for scalability, will not be able to work on the project anymore. Is that right?
Yes. What happened to ETCDEV and Igor, who's one developer with a team, is just an isolated event of that company. It's not something that you can consider. I was trying to check the price. I thought the last price I saw was like 425, something like that. But yeah, no, this is a situation of one group cutting funding to another group, and that group running out of funds, and then this group taking advantage of that to poach the employees, and they're moving the developers to the. If they're doing that, they're trying to hire the developers. Not all are going, because some didn't like the action. So the blockchain itself is intact. The operating blockchain, I mean, with exchanges, wallets, miners, etc., is safe, and there's no issue with the blockchain. There was, however, a third event from the same entity that did represent a threat to the network. And on Friday, I believe Friday 30th, we announced that threat as an official announcement of ETCDEV on Twitter, which is that during this time when Igor started to talk to them, to DFG and Terry Culver, between the first half of October and the end of November, not only did they not send the money, they only sent 40 of all the money promised, and they started to hire 100% of the employees, or attempting to hire 100% of the employees. But they also, during the process, before the conflict began, they had insisted to Igor to add their own administrative person into the Ethereum Classic GitHub organization as an administrator. That's the highest position in GitHub. I think it's member or admin. The admins have more. They can do more things. That admin was added by Igor after consulting with another admin, Cody Burns. They didn't think it was a threat at the time. Maybe it was the second half of October, first half of November. They said, okay, they are insisting. They are a prominent player in the space. So why not? Igor wrote that in a blog post. So they added CryCoder, which is this new admin, which is Eric Yang, CFO of DFG, and he just remained there. On Friday, November 30th in the morning call, Igor came to the call as usual, and not only spoke about funding and that we're not getting funding, even from the community fund. Igor was promised funding. They have like $70,000, so he requested as an emergency to send them the money so that he could pay the salaries. And they said he didn't talk to all of them, but some of them said yes, so he was expecting the money, but then the money never came. That's another story. But in that call, he also said that he saw on GitHub that this CryCoder admin revoked all other admins from the GitHub. So now there was only owner of the whole Ethereum Classic GitHub organization. So that became a generalized security threat to the network. It wasn't anymore funding of ETCDEV or poaching of employees, which is business as usual. I mean, no, that happens all the time, and it's particular to ETCDEV. But when the same attacker in this pattern of gaining control of development and poaching core developers, got full admin control or full admin ownership, excluding all the others, then we correctly decided that was something that had to be announced to the whole community, and we announced it on Friday, November 30th. So that was the third vector, which is very important in the whole story. Then in December 1st, Saturday and Sunday, December 2nd, Igor still didn't get the money from the community fund, so he posted on our group Slack that he had to dismiss the team and that he had no more money, so he was shutting down the company. So at that time was that we all knew, or we all realized that ETCDEV was not continuing, and that we were not employees of the company anymore. And he said that he owed us money for 2 weeks, that he didn't pay us, and that he was trying to get the money, and whenever he gets the money in the future, he would pay us. And also he said that he was going to individually continue working for the project Emerald, Sputnik VM, and Orbita, because they are open source projects, but he doesn't want to work on ETC. He wants to use those for multiple platforms and other places.
Yeah, I guess that's good news, because you're still going to have side chains for ETC. And that's maybe one of the main reasons for anyone to invest and believe in the project, just because it promises to have a different model for scalability, which is less centralizing than sharding or than just increasing the block size like all the others.
Absolutely. From ETC's perspective, from the blockchain's perspective, there is, I would say, a social security threat, which is this entity taking control of the GitHub, and that there is a loss of a very important person, in my opinion, Igor, and a very important company, which is ETCDEV. why is that a problem? It's not a security. It's not a it's a. I would say it's a security threat, but it's not like a normal security threat. No, it's not a hack or anything like that. But I think that it's a security problem because these balancing force that was always conservative against the other force, which was trying to build bridges with Ethereum, receiving money from donations from Ethereum, and trying to create treasuries and stuff like that. Even though all those things individually are fine and everybody is entitled to their opinion, it's always good for security to also have a conservative side in a blockchain that argues against anything that is seen as a threat to the network, and that is lost.
Wait, so are you saying that the fact that the Ethereum Classic Cooperative received some money from the Ethereum Foundation is part of the issue?
No. What I'm saying is that side, for example, has that kind of thinking, which is not very conservative. They are prioritizing maybe having better relationships with other networks, prioritizing social agreement with other groups who are clearly not security focused. So we just don't agree with those things. So we are conservative. So independently of the issues themselves, the particular issues, I think there was a balance in the blockchain, in the social layer, where in the spectrum, all the other groups are like are moderate or more less conservative, and we were from moderate to more conservative. And Igor, especially, he was the visionary of immutability in ETCDEV. So that was very important. Me personally as well, I totally agree with him. If you go to the home of the website of ETCDEV, you're going to see a phrase where we explain our philosophy. It's I don't know. I have your screen here. I could go, but you could go. It's more or less in the middle of the page. It talks about immutability and decentralization.
Yeah, decentralization and immutability must be the main principles of any public blockchain.
Yes, and we explain there in one phrase why. So that's what I'm saying. In the social layer, there's always people on one side, people in the center, people on the other, and that's good. I think that they took out one side, and now you have people in the only the other groups, and that's why I think ETC in the social layer at this point is a risk, because they're tending to centralization of ideas.
Well, that's good that you mentioned, because I was reading the articles of Igor, and let me see. For example, Darcy Reno, or Reno, how do you pronounce it? Darcy, anyway.
Darcy Reno, I think.
He said that any proposal must go through the whole process of validating through ETC/IPs, and nobody could just impose on the grounds of providing funds or financing to make changes all of a sudden. And at the same time, there is also somebody else, Borderless Technologies Corp, and he says that this is the decentralization paradox, where there is tolerance paradox, and those who want decentralization at all costs end up being super centralized.
I didn't read that blog post. You said you were reading Igor's blog post?
Yeah, this is in the comments.
No, that the ECIP process by itself is the guarantee of decentralization is false, because the ECIP process is just a process. So you have an input of ideas and proposals, the process, and then an output. If in the input and the process and in the output you eliminate all the conservatives, then you only have one opinion. So if there's one person that believes in treasury, eliminated the person that doesn't believe in treasury, and then they debate in the ECIP chat on GitHub that everybody agrees on the treasury, of course they're going to implement the treasury, and the treasury is insecure at the protocol layer, not in the second layer. So the ECIP process does not guarantee decentralization by itself. It's not sufficient. You need to have a social layer that is also balanced with different opinions. And also, of course, the base operating blockchain, which is totally decentralized.
Okay. I'm not sure if I have any more questions, but I would be very happy to talk to the other parties involved in this struggle for power, also ETC Cooperative, and maybe IOHK, and definitely ETC Labs.
I just can I say something?
Of course, that's why we're having this interview.
I just want to say that from what's going on is that one, ETCDEV ran out of money, like we said before, that our employees were poached by the person who provoked our cash crunch, and that that same person who provoked our cash crunch and poached employees also took over GitHub. So this is a pattern. Whoever doesn't see this as a security threat for the network is because they don't know about security and they're being naive. There's three things that they're saying there in the market that are false. One is that Igor mismanaged funds, and that's why he ran out of funds. No, he got a donation when he, I don't know, a year or 2 years ago when he started all this. He's been working here for 2.5 years on ETC. He was one of the 4 people who saved ETC initially, and that donation was in ETC, and the donor, who wanted to remain anonymous, required that the money stay in ETC. So all this time he had the money in ETC. It was only $150,000, so he couldn't have done anything of what just with that amount. What happened is that ETC in the last 2 years went up a lot in value, so it turned into a lot of money. I don't know how much. So he could grow the team and pay to all the team, and they not only modified or made improved Classic Get, which is the community project, but they created Emerald Wallet, Sputnik VM, which is the best VM in all the Ethereum compatible blockchains in the world. And also now we were building Orbita. So there was no mismanagement. What happened is that there was a market crash. He was at the end of this money that he had received, and he just normally went to get for money, and then the rest happened. The second thing that they're saying is that, oh, there was no poaching. It's just hiring employees who were not being paid and were just free agents. No, that's not true. We were, until December 3rd, we were still a company, and nobody had resigned, and nobody, except for Darcy, and nobody had been fired. But since at least the first half of mid-November until December 3rd, when we were still a company, they had already offered everybody except me and human resources person and the designer, so all the engineers, they had offered jobs. So that is the definition of poaching. So yes, there was poaching. And then they're saying that this person, CryCoder, he really did a mistake when he revoked all the other admins. Okay, that is not the case. It's extremely unlikely that he made a mistake, because all the other admins say that there were 5, I don't know how they were, 5 or 10. He had to go one by one, a 4-step process to revoke each one, and put his password at the end. So that is a mistake. Again, in terms of security for the network, is either ignorant in terms of security practices, or very naive because they're trusting DFG. And the last thing is that they're saying that because DFG asked Igor in this period to add CryCoder as an admin, and he agreed that Igor is the person responsible for this attack, for eliminating all the admins. Well, now that is a tergiversation of the truth. No, you're changing the truth and putting it upside down. The person who committed the attack was first DFG, who asked Igor to add the person. Then that person revoked all the admins. That's the attack. Whether Igor made a mistake by adding that person, consulting with Cody Burns, yes, and he accepts it, and he told me, and he put it on Twitter, He even wrote a blog post that he made a mistake and that he considered it was negligence from his part. So in that sense, we agree, but that he is responsible for the attack or anything like that is completely false.
Okay, so I guess I have one last question which came to me while you were speaking. Do you think that DFG has good intentions in regards to Ethereum Classic, or how do you view the involvement of DFG in the project?
They don't have good intentions because they did all these things. Okay, they cut the funding from us and they caused our cash crunch. They requested to add Crycoder, who committed the attack. They poached our employees and they revoked the admins. And then they copied all the ETCDEV software, Emerald, Sputnik, Emerald Wallet, all our work, they copied to their site on GitHub also. So evidently, they don't have good intentions. That the majority of those things are just corporate stuff, I agree. But the attack on the network itself exists. And I would say that attacking, digamos, poaching the core developer team is also a form of attack because they're putting under their own umbrella the core developer team. They want control, and control in itself is a security threat for the network. So the action against ETCDEV, although it looks corporate only, it is corporate, but it's also a security threat and an attack to the network. And it's a coordinated attack, as you can see, in all their activities. What was the other part of the question?
Well, let's just say that they have good intentions in regards to, they remove a team, but at the same time, they want to carry on with the roadmap, and they do it just as well because they take away all the engineers. So maybe
Yes.
if this is just about Igor and the people who follow him, you think that they can do, or they can allow?
No, wait. You're simplifying. It's not about Igor and ETCDEV and that's it. They went to GitHub and they revoked all the other admins. That's a very important threat to the network, not to ETCDEV. So please don't confuse that part. And the fact that it's coordinated with what they did to Igor, it seems to be the same general pattern, which is basically to gain control of all of ETC. However, do they want to gain control and then kill it and go to zero, for example, the crypto, or just to kill the network out of existence? I don't think so. They want to make money, I'm sure. So they just have the wrong, maybe, idea of how to make the network successful. The network is successful if you maintain decentralization and security, and all the groups, opposing groups, are balancing the forces within the blockchain, not taking control. So in terms of the taking control theme, I think that they are performing that attack. In terms of killing the network, no. Just as Tezos is centralized, Ethereum is centralized, EOS is centralized, and the other proof of stake Turing complete networks are centralized, but they Ripple, Stellar, they're all centralized. That doesn't mean that they are going to cease to exist.
Okay, so I guess you've made your point.
Yes.
And this was definitely a lot more than I expected in terms of.
That's very good, because all the other people who don't agree with me or Igor or ETCDEV, and they are practically feeling very comfortable that Igor is not in ETC anymore and ETCDEV is not here anymore. They are, and I suggest you talk to them because they have an opposing opinion. They are the ones who say that it was Igor's mismanagement of money. It was they have a totally opposing view. So it would be interesting to have their view. But their view is the one that is mostly out there, and that's why you didn't have the complete vision. I can tell you that what I'm telling you, at least according to us, is exactly how the facts are.
Okay, and I'm going to publish this right now. So this is going to get minimal edits. I'm going to publish it right now along with the responses which I got from Igor on the email. And from that point onwards, I hope that I open the floor for debates and maybe the other side will get more involved and talk.
Very good. although I'm convinced about that I am I have the facts. That doesn't mean that that I don't respect the opinions of others, especially Anthony, Yas, Kuri, Kevin, the other people who don't agree with us. There's people also saying that we are creating drama. No, when Igor posted that the company was running out of funds and he was criticized for that, it wasn't drama, it was the truth, and it's the core development team of Ethereum, and it's a Ethereum Classic, and he felt the responsibility to announce that the core devs were running out of money. It's very important, so it's not drama. Then when we announced that there was an attack to the community because the admins were revoked in GitHub, that was considered that we shouldn't have done it, and that we were being dramatic. And no, it's not true. Of course, if there's a general threat, you don't have to keep it between friends and not tell anyone. You have to tell everybody. And they're saying this thing that it's really Igor's mismanagement and it's really Igor that's being dramatic. No, it's not drama. If they're observing drama because they feel bad because we don't agree with them, they're focusing on the wrong points. They're missing the point, just like they're missing the point by saying that this is all Igor's fault.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. McIntyre, and I hope we will be speaking again at some point in the future when you get back to your regular work.
Thank you, Vlad. Thank you very much for the opportunity to express my ideas. Again, this is my personal opinion, and I don't work for ETCDEV anymore since December 3rd, but I want ETCDEV to come back and Igor, because it would be very, very important for ETC to remain decentralized at the social layer also.
Mm-hmm. I'll publish this and tag you on Twitter.
Thank you.
And we'll see what happens.
Very good.
So goodbye.
Bye-bye.